Often when we judge ourselves, we're judging other people. We might not even realize it, but we are, because if we're constantly telling ourselves this is good or bad, I'm a good or a bad person, or this is the good way of doing it and this is the bad way of doing it. Says who? Says God? Says your parents? Says a friend? Says social media? How about, what do you need as a person? What makes you feel good deep down inside as a person? Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to I Think I Can podcast. This is episode 40. And I'm going to continue on with relationships, I guess you could say, the topic of relationships, but specifically today, falling under the area of being judgmental towards oneself. And I mean, I think this is a constant. It's just a part of about being a human, is that we are, I mean, hopefully, right? Hopefully we're going to sort of look at our behaviors and, the things that we say, how we act, and reflect on that and, have this conversation in our head, whether that was okay or not okay, good or bad. But unfortunately, this can get a little bit too carried away. And so the last couple episodes I've been speaking about, how certain qualities that we have or things that have happened in our past, whether it's a health issue or whether it's trauma or whether it's societal norms, has sort of possibly, been diluting our relationships in some way, that they have affected our relationships in not a great way. So I am going to again speak about perfectionism, but sort of a subcategory is going to be judgment of ourselves. And, like, again, this is all sort of a system. There's not, certain just like definite categories of what sort of, like I said, dilutes our relationships. But perfectionism definitely is a big one. Okay. And it falls underneath, it's a category on its own, I feel, but at the same time, it does stem from, I think, two main other categories, and that's parental influences and societal norms, right? because we get this idea of needing to be perfect normally from one of those two areas in our lives. So, or yeah, let's talk about how we judge ourselves, the conversations that we have in our heads. And so, you know, we have to think about, like, one of the main reasons why being trying to be perfect as a human being is is definitely related to relationships in general, because we have to think, if we're relating to ourself in this way, how 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 well can we relate to another person? For example, if I'm constantly judging my every move, or how I look, or what I eat, or how I exercise, or if I don't exercise, or how I show up in my career, um, whatever it might be, we're going to have a really hard time connecting deeply with someone, because those conversations in our head are not going to be encouraging conversations. We're judging ourselves, likely using words that are downright mean to ourselves, like, you idiot, like, or how could you give in to that craving, now look, or, oh, you didn't exercise, and so that's not good for you, and um oh, you like you need to have a certain hairstyle in order to be loved. Yeah, I need to have long hair. I need to have short hair. I need to have, I mean, this was like body image, the other podcast I talked about, but it's it's so many different areas. People that should themselves on their, career, where they should be at this point in their life, and they're not here, and or what their ideal career should be, um, based on parental influences, or a health guru out there, listening, in podcast land, and or books that they're listening to or reading, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's relationships. I mean, it's almost like we have too much information coming to us, in this generation that we have now. It's You can Google's at our fingertips, podcasts, audiobooks, social media. It's too much, and so it's really hard not to judge ourselves. But and that's, like I say, that's good, right? Like, I mean, like, we want to kind of live up to being a certain kind of person in this world. We all have integrity. um but when it's when we see it tipping the scale towards negative thoughts of ourselves, rather than, you know I'm doing my best. I'm reflecting, I'm changing my behavior to be a better version of myself. I mean, that's healthy. But what I'm seeing is, like, for those who come into my office with so much self-judgment and so much unworthiness, and this idea that if I'm not right, I'm wrong. It's black and white, but that's not what we are as human beings. We're always learning, and we're always making mistakes, and the whole idea of making mistakes is to change, and see that as sort of like, oh, that's a little nugget of information I just got there. I made that mistake. I am not going to do that again. um and and that slowly evolves over time. like, but it's so, when we talk about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, our conscious mind is, I've probably mentioned this before, but it's sort of the gatekeeper in terms of what it allows to come into the subconscious. And it's going to say whether something is good or bad. And if it's bad, it's going to, whether it's good or bad, it's going to plant that into your subconscious. And you are going to sort of evolve through your actions, through your subconscious as the years go on. Because if that belief gets implanted in your subconscious, it's sort of, as I said, like subconsciously, you don't even know you're behaving or even thinking like this, because it's so deep in your subconscious. It's a part of who you are. But we always need to remind ourselves that we were children, and very often like very suggestible and very impressionable. And it's not the fault of our parents for leading us one way or the other. It's just fact. It's not your teacher's fault that she um you know I don't know, put you down for a drawing that you did or an essay that you did, and now you're I don't know, struggling with, worthiness around your the work that you do, or something like that. I mean, it's neither here nor there. That's all the past. And it's what we need to do now is to reflect on knowing that we have this tendency to always want to be perfect. Find out where the root cause of that is. I mean, it's good to come, to see someone, a professional, and say, or do a lot of your own journaling and reflection and kind of go, where did this come from? um, and then do your best to kind of find the root cause, and then from there look at what you want for a goal and start changing that dialogue in your head, changing the belief to be a belief that's going to serve you towards getting to that goal. So like, I can think of, a couple of recent examples of this in my work that I did that maybe you can relate to. Obviously, I bring these up just in the hope that you can relate it to. And I often talk about women in my practice, but actually these last two clients that came in were young men, and their issue in essence was what I'm speaking about today. A lot of self-judgment, a lot of um, low self-esteem, low confidence. And it wasn't obvious. Like with one, it was very obvious. And this one young man um, realizes that it was a lot of parental influence, especially as it related to Christianity and the beliefs that are housed in Christianity or any organized religion. I think some more than others, when it comes to black or white, you're either a good person or you're a bad person. And in fact, he mentioned a couple different sayings that his dad repeated over and over throughout his childhood, and that was, if it's not right, it's wrong. So putting that thought on a habit loop, thinking the same thought over and over and over, sort of being brainwashed by that thought, it's going to be a belief, and it is going to settle in your subconscious, which means you are acting now as an adult without even paying attention to, it's like you're acting and then realizing, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why am I choosing these behaviors that are making me feel horrible? Like, for example, when we're speaking about relationships, in this specific example, um, he was in a very good relationship for a couple of years where he really adored this woman and her the same. But his need to be perfect would obviously affect the relationship, but he didn't necessarily judge her actions. Well, yes and no. I'll maybe speak on that a little bit later. Didn't really, but it was like, because he, incredible, like he even said this, I am the best boyfriend ever because I just, you know, just, like, I'm honest, I'm loyal. All I want to do is please her, and because he always put himself second, because again, based on his religious upbringing, it was, not only do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It was, you need to put yourself last. Your whole existence is based on serving others. So how do you think that's working for him in his life? He has no boundaries when it comes to self-care, um, self-worth, looking deep inside of himself and saying, what are my needs? What are my primal needs? Um, it's every time he would possibly serve himself, like in love himself, he would then be hijacked with these, terrible thoughts of, how could you do that? You're a terrible person, you're a disgusting person. You're not working hard enough, or you're not um, giving your time enough to other people, or it's just a horrible, horrible cycle. And I mean, his partner watching this, you, watching a person that she loves, for example, always go to this self-hatred and being in his head constantly, judging himself constantly from the moment he wakes up to the time he goes to bed. He even said, by 1 p.m. in the day, I am exhausted because I'm constantly battling my thoughts in my head about, did I do that right? He's constantly in the past, his past actions, what he could possibly do in the future to improve, to be a better person, to always be a better person, better grades, better employee, better son, better boyfriend, whatever that may be, better friend. And instead of just, being in the moment and enjoying the work he loves to do. So she sees this, and you can see, I mean, at a point, I mean, it would be very hard for any woman to be around a person whose self-worth and self-esteem and confidence is so low. It's not an attractive feature, right? It's not an attractive personality trait. You want to be dating someone who's highly confident, assertive, a person who knows what they want. They have their vision, they have their long-term goal, and that that they're focused on that and they're not constantly hijacked by this other terrible voice in their head. But in fact, he ended the relationship. And he ended the relationship because of tremendous guilt and shame that related to what he felt a perfect couple needs to be, a perfect marriage needs to be. And he needed to improve himself more as a person in order to even live up to what that relationship would be. And it had to do with premarital sex. It was that they both had premarital sex, and therefore that was no longer the perfect relationship. So a very, very sad situation, and that's sort of an extreme. But I'll give you an example of the other fellow that came in, and I'm going to speak more towards the solution later, but the solution for him, the solution for everyone that struggles with perfectionism. But another example was, and this is how it sometimes, well, a lot of the times of like the struggles that in your head, the the energy sucking dialogues that you're having in your head, how it becomes a actual like stress issue, and how it eventually affects the body. How you think is how you feel. And when you're not feeling good, you have to think, what are the thoughts in my head that's causing me to have this feeling? So, but for this other young man, it manifested into an overactive bladder. So, and anybody who has IBS can definitely relate to this. It's sort of a form of IBS. But, unfortunately, when you step into your doctor's office, the often, might prescribe medication for something like this, or like, okay, an overactive bladder, he was prescribed medication for that. But an overactive bladder is a symptom of something else. Often the symptoms are used to define, or used to diagnose you, but it's a symptom of something deeper within the person. IBS is a symptom of some sort of communication between the mind and the gut, the gut brain connection that's involves the vagus nerve, and it has so much to do with tension and inflammation. And it's complicated, but it's not. It's I think anyone who has or experienced very anxious behavior will tell you that it directly related to their gut. Either they can't eat, or they're constipated because of it, or they have diarrhea because of it, or emotional eating too is related to that. But it's sort of, yeah, it's an urge. Someone who's deeply lonely and sad might have an urge, a craving to go to food, and they're not going, they're not chomping on a celery stick. They're going for food that's probably very unhealthy, and they might binge on the food to fill that void of emptiness and loneliness. But there is an urge or a craving that came before that. So relating to the overactive bladder, what that means is that this fellow has this urge, this constant feeling and urge to pee. And it's debilitating for him. It's keeping, he's getting only 2 or 3 hours of sleep per night because of it, because this urge to pee. And, you know, given medication for it, which is possibly a placebo effect. I mean, it helped somewhat, but that's not the solution. It's and the solution isn't to drink less. And the solution isn't to, you know, investigate the diet. And is it, you know, is it nightshades? Is it like, I mean, he's doing all of that. Of course, he's trying to find the solution on his own when, like, I'm not going to get into how the belief of needing to urinate constantly came about, but now and it doesn't really matter, because now it's the power of the mind that we have to start thinking about. It's training the mind to tell the body that you don't need this chocolate cake. You don't need to pee. You don't need to, you know, and it, of course, you have to do this very, very gradually, but you do have to spend a lot of your time focusing, or I should say, being aware of the thoughts that are attached to the feelings. You know, feelings of hopelessness or helplessness need to be flipped on its head and replaced with thoughts of, and like, thoughts that's going to remind you that you have all the power in the world to change this around, because you're going to decide to think of your condition differently. You are going to remind yourself that the mind controls the body. The body doesn't control the mind. My thoughts create my physiology. So my certain suggestion for that situation, well, for both of them, is that we have to work on the mind. We have to focus our thoughts on we have to be aware of our thoughts. And when they're not thoughts that are going to give us empowerment and compassion, you know, for the first fellow, it's tremendous compassion, and also very curious about oneself. You can't, like, we live in duality at all times. There's not a, you know, you're not a good or a bad person. There's a huge spectrum in between. You wake up happy some days. Other days you wake up in a low mood or extremely sad. You say really intelligent things sometimes. And other times, maybe you're unfocused and tired and you say really stupid things sometimes that you're embarrassed. You are able to regulate your emotions and respond to someone very well. Other times you can't, like, you lose it and you react in a way that you feel tremendous regret in doing. But if your intention every morning is to do your best job as a mere mortal on this earth, then I feel that's good enough. I mean, these ideas that, like the dialogue, like I say, the dialogue that we're having in our heads for these two people that, and many of you out there probably listening, that this need to be perfect, and you're constantly judging yourself or in your behaviors and your words as being, good or bad, and there's no in between, rather than doing what you should be doing is being aware of your thoughts. Are these thoughts serving me? And if they're not serving me, if they're not changing my behavior in a way that's, like I say, empowering, enlightening, exciting, this whole idea of being able to change, the way I think of myself and the beliefs I have in myself, that's what you want, because it's too hard to do life this way otherwise. And you're not meant to be put on this earth only to suffer. You will have days of suffering, and you will have days of tremendous joy and happiness. But it's knowing that you're always going to be on a spectrum. And if you're having very bad days, very like a very low moment in your life, let's say periods of extreme hardships, losing a loved one, or ending a relationship, whatever that might be, that you remind yourself, this is temporary. This is very temporary. I know that I can do one or two. I know time does heal, and that this is temporary. But also, what can I look at, in the last few interactions that I've had or something like that, I didn't make me feel good? How could I have done that better? Again, like journaling, I find is so great. It's sort of like, wow, I responded that way, or I reacted that way. What caused me to do that? And that wasn't a good feeling. How can I change that in the future to feel differently? What can I, what triggered that in me to say those things or react in that way? Doing some really good introspection, always always kind of excited about doing it too. It's like, wow, I can change my behavior in the future if I take the time to feel that emotion and that feeling in the moment, and like being my own investigator. And I don't want to feel like that anymore. So how do I need to change my thoughts or my behavior that's going to make me feel differently the next time I have that interaction? So understanding, what do I want in life in terms, of even relationships, and where is that? What do I need to do to get me there? Um, and going towards the solution, like for the examples I gave, like, I mean, professionals, these two individuals seeking out, any professional out there. It could be someone who does hypnosis, and sometimes hypnosis can be very, very helpful, because we are going to put you on a different thought loop, a thought loop that serves yourself much better. It's almost like brainwashing yourself, right? Hypnosis. And like, Marissa Peer is a well-known hypnotherapist, and she has written a lot of great books, and one of her latest books, I think, is entitled, it's not going to be perfect, I'm saying here, but Tell Yourself a Different Lie, or Tell Yourself a Better Lie. And it's all on that premise of, if you've been telling yourself um, these these words of unworthiness, words that kind of make you feel awful as a person, that's just, it's not the truth. So tell yourself a better lie. Why don't you choose the thought of, I am good enough. I've always been worthy of love. And, when it comes to Christianity and the sort of like all these organized religions, it's sometimes it's unfortunately like so divisive, right? It's so black or white. You're wrong or you're right. And that's just not true. So we need to tell ourselves a better lie. The lie that you've been using in the past is not going to serve you. So why don't we just like erase that old recording that you've been using since childhood and implant a new recording into your subconscious. Now that doesn't happen overnight, but through repetition and small little goals. So what might that look like? It might be, really writing out the opposite words that you should be telling. Like, I mean, like instead of telling yourself degrading words, it's telling yourself uplifting words. And maybe writing that, I know maybe some of you are hearing that, oh my gosh, don't tell me to put sticky notes on my desktop computer or my dashboard or my fridge, or that doesn't work. Well, you know what? It does. It does, because what it is, it's constant reminders throughout the day. Again, like focusing on the awareness of your thoughts throughout the day of, I need to tell myself different words right now, and just even seeing those words, in your environment will remind yourself, oh, I'm gonna do this repetition. I'm gonna do this repetition, because repetition turns into belief, and achieving these small goals is also affirming that you can move forward. It's, you need to start doing something. You have to stop thinking of these things you want to do, and instead start doing things, like do something. So maybe it's reading affirmations, maybe it's doing breath work in the morning, that you can just at least try to still the mind, give the mind the rest it needs instead of being in your head constantly throughout the day. So that might be, meditation that's focuses, well, that where your goal is to have more concentration. So it might be like like more focused on, I'm just going to listen to my breath for the next 3 minutes. That's all I'm going to do. That's training attention. That's training, focus. And that can be very, very helpful. Even I had to kind of laugh the other day. It was, I'm personally trying to do that type of meditation more in the morning, and like to begin my day with a clear mind. But the squirrels were chirping outside, and so instead of focusing on my breath, I was focusing on the squirrel. But I kind of had to laugh because of that saying. It's like, oh, squirrel. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. But I mean, I did maintain my my focus on the squirrel, so I think that's okay. It wasn't like I was going back and forth. But other people might need more of a meditative practice that where they need to envision their goal. So they might just be sitting in the stillness, visualizing, and let's say you're working on this idea that you want a promotion. So you can visualize your boss having that discussion with you. You can, just feel how happy you are as he's congratulating you on this promotion, or she's congratulating you on this promotion, and your colleagues also, you know, just tons of like congratulations and telling you how deserving you are of this. um, Looking, visualizing your bank account and the numbers just, increasing in your savings. Like, I mean, like you have to realize you're projecting these images on your subconscious, so that your subconscious is creating your reality. The more you speak to your subconscious like this, especially in the drowsy states, either just before you go to sleep at night or just as you wake up in the morning, this is when your subconscious is the most suggestible. And so the work's going to be that much more effective. You can't really do this while you're driving your car. Like you have to be focused on the road, obviously, and not these. So, it's a matter of doing the work. It really is. And anyone can have a new idea of what success means. Success is not being right or perfect. Success is, well, life, being a human is a pendulum going back and forth. I mean, mistakes, okay, let's change course, let's course correct. Constant introspection. I want to do that. Like, I mean, making the baby steps. Maybe when I'm working with someone like that, is there something that's challenging to you, like something that you could do that would be very uncomfortable because you're such a people pleaser? Could you maybe, I don't know, if a parent is asking you to do something for them, or a friend, is that, could you possibly stop and ask yourself, do I genuinely want to do this for this person? Or am I exhausted right now? And I know if I do this, it's not going to, it's going to affect my sleep for the next day. And it's sort of like, okay, if I don't genuinely want to do this, how could I respond to that person instead? Is that a micro goal for you? But just starting really small, because starting really small is going to allow you success. What some people don't understand is that if you make these big goals, like, for either one of these fellows, for example, you can't go towards the big goal right away, because if you fail at that goal, what are you doing? You're just, again, if you're constantly making big goals and constantly failing them, you're putting this repeat pattern in your head, this thought pattern of, I fail, I fail, I fail, which means I can't trust myself in anything I do. I can't trust myself in the goals I'm creating. So we have to create goals that we're almost like, 70% sure that we're going to get there. Like, this is something that I can highly see myself. It's going to make me uncomfortable, but I think, you know what? I really think I could. I really think I could. So I've spoken about this before. You know what I'm saying? But that's the place to start. So in summary, I'm going to say that we really have to take note how often we're judging ourselves throughout the day. We need to be aware of that. So gain consciousness of the self-judgment. Then we need to get curious. Well, actually, maybe we need to be compassionate first. compassionate towards ourselves. It's okay, that was maybe not the greatest, thing I just did, but forgive yourself and move on. And we need to be curious and ask ourselves, what made me feel this way? So introspection, why did I react like that? What made me do that behavior that I know is not serving me or my relationship well? And then take note of that, and let's see what I can do to challenge that in the future, or do it differently next time. But the main thing here is to really decide, what do I want in my life? What kind of life do I want? And once you decide that, have that as your long-term goal. And if it's revolving relationship, it's just sort of like having a relationship where, we don't focus on each other's flaws. I don't focus on my own flaws, so I don't judge myself constantly. And I don't focus on my partner's flaws constantly. We're very forgiving of ourselves and of one another. And we don't focus on the past behaviors. We focus on, what do we want in the future together? What is our long-term vision together? And how can I change as a person in order to allow that vision to come true? What do I need to do as a person? So it's both, right? Because I think I mentioned this earlier too. It's like, I especially the one fellow that was extremely judgmental towards himself. He may not realize this, but he actually was judgmental of his partner as well, because she wasn't living up to the perfection, the idea of a perfect, potentially wife could be, because of the issue of premarital sex. Like, I just, like, he might not even have that in his consciousness, that he did judge her somewhat for that, even though he just adores her. So we got to watch that, because, like I say, often when we judge ourselves, we're judging other people. We might not even realize it, but we are, because if we're constantly telling ourselves, this is good or bad, I'm a good or a bad person, or this is the good way of doing it and this is the bad way of doing it. Says who? Says God? Says your parents? Says a friend? Says social media? How about, what do you need as a person? What makes you feel good deep down inside as a person? So, kind of coming back to, if you're self-judging, like if you're judging, you're constantly scrutinizing your behaviors, your thoughts, your actions, how can you be vulnerable with another person? It'd be incredibly hard, right? It's like, because if you're constantly telling yourself you're not good enough, it's not something you really want to expose to somebody, right? Someone you deeply care about. If you're having this battle in your mind constantly, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of someone's love, then you'd be, feel propelled to to have that conversation with the person all the time. It's sort of, okay, well, I screwed up again today. Oh, I screwed up. I mean, you don't want to have these kind of conversations with anybody, and no one wants to have the conversation with you. Who wants to be around someone who's constantly putting themselves down and feeling hopeless and helpless? So it's a real thing. It's something that everyone really needs to take action on, and realizing that self-compassion, curiosity about themselves, and accepting themselves for the person they are right in this moment. It's great to have long-term goals of what you want to become, but right now you're perfect as you are. In God's eyes, in I'm sure your friends' eyes, in your partner's eyes, you're good enough right now. So I hope this helps. This whole idea of judging oneself, and take care, and we will connect next week. If you like what you heard, please rate the podcast and share it, because I'm sure there's someone out there who might need this message. In fact, I'm sure there's many people out there that suffer with this. Okay, thanks. See you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.